I would normally be doing chapter 10, capillary collection, and I would teach you pretty much the final way to stick and get blood out of somebody in my class, which is nothing to it really, but I'm gonna wait till everybody's in here and we'll do that. And then what you gotta worry about when you're testing this stuff. So we're gonna go to chapter 11, which basically reviews what can go wrong in a test before, during, and after. And all those things that can contribute to this kind of make sense when you're talking about the different tests and the tubes, and we've really been in that, and so I'm hoping it will connect, it will help you further connect that a CBC is in a purple tube, and it has to be drawn last, and that a sterile procedure will be drawn first, all that stuff, okay? So, what are we doing? We're testing things, we're getting results, we're doing data. So we can have errors pre-analytically. We're analyzing blood, right? Analytical errors post. Variables is what we're talking about here. Pre-analytic variables, analytical variables, and post-analytical variables. What is a variable? Not in terms of geometry or algebra. It's the one thing that could change the whole situation, right? All right. If you're testing for a fasting blood sugar, the variable could be they've eaten or they've not eaten. That's what could change in the test. Where do you think most errors occur over all the blood drawn, getting results back to patients from the initial order that came to you? Where do you think most errors are prone to occur? Why do you choose pre-analytic?
Because people don't follow directions, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you're right. This is where the most errors are prone to occur, which unfortunately is your area of expertise in this phlebotomy world now. Okay? An example I just gave you, all right, you used alcohol in a blood alcohol test instead of soap and water. Analytical variables would be during analysis, like the machines aren't calibrated monthly, or you're not doing trial and errors to make sure they're giving you accurate results. People in the lab aren't doing things correctly, or they're not analyzing them quick enough within a time frame for the sample before it expires. Okay? Post-analytical would be an example of reporting stat results to physician as soon as they're available. Attributing results to the wrong patient account. Something like that, okay? Once identified, a variable is controlled to the extent possible on page 177, chapter 11, bottom. Through the institution of set written procedures, monitoring the variable is performed and documented to ensure that impact on test results is minimized. For example, did you wash your hands? Did you do this? Did you use this? There are three types of variables, which I just explained. I'm not going to read to you. Flip the page. 178 at the top left. Specimen collection accounts for more than half of the errors in pre-analytical variables. So with right here, what did it say? Specimen collection errors. %, right? I think. So the wrong tube, your needle was too big, the tourniquet was left on too long. And another area that you'll come to learn about is handling specimens, which we're not talking about right now. Well, we might. It might be in the next paragraph. Handling errors. This would be you didn't get it up to the lab in time, or you didn't cover it in tinfoil, or you didn't keep it on ice, depending on what that sample needed. You will see these clearly defined in that pink paper that tells you what you're going to be tested over at NCCT I gave you. Specimen collection errors, it's like a whole section. Pre-analytical variables, collection time of transport conditions. Post-analytical, such as delays in reporting results or improper results, may also be a problem. Many pre-analytical variables arise during patient prep and specimen collection. So there's another area. Patient prep. One of the most important pre-analytical variables, this is the third paragraph down, left side of 178, is the day-to-day and hour-to-hour fluctuations in composition of the blood. To minimize the effects of these fluctuations, reference ranges for blood tests are based on healthy patients in what is known as the basal state. So if you look at the basal state, this is body at normal levels. And what defines a normal level? And no food, no exercising for 8 to 12 hours. And what activity are we performing the most when we're not eating and we're not exercising? Sleeping. Okay, so this is why samples are usually drawn early. And this is why phlebotomist life is usually early morning work, like 4 a.m. So when you're coming in to get blood samples, the kitchen crew's coming in to start making breakfast for the whole hospital, and it's going to be going out in 2 hours, and you've got to have everybody done, right? So, basal state. Anybody ever heard of a BMR, a basic metabolic rate? Maybe at one point in your life you have. It was big back in like the late 90s in terms of trying to lose weight and stuff. Well, your BMR is how many calories you need just to sit in a chair and look at the TV, not be exercising or doing, like, it's what you burn at your basal state, basic or basal metabolic rate. Anyways, so good. That's kind of bringing some light as to why you got to draw some before others. The fasting issue is now relevant to you all a little bit better. You get that? Okay. Let's look at all the ways that patients can mess this up for us. And this is where we'll probably won't get through. I'll probably stop halfway through this for the class today. I'm not going to keep you more than 30 minutes, okay? Physical condition. Age is the first one. Why would age factor into different results? Let's just think about one possible results, a liver function test or a kidney function test. Why would age make a difference on these?
Well, I do know with your kidneys, as you get older, sometimes, I mean, it changes on how you can use them, like you can be incontinent, you know, it changes as
Yeah.
you get older.
Well, that's more of a bladder and muscle control issue or maybe a neurologic. But in terms of your kidneys functioning and filtering your blood and causing your chemistry to change, yes. And I'm only saying that because I want you to be professional.
Right.
And so I'm being pedantic
That's
right now.
okay, I want you to be.
Okay, yeah, when you get older, these organs and other organs stop working as efficiently as they did when you were younger. So you're going to see different results for the elderly population. Organ function declines with age. Values affected by kidney or liver. Cholesterol and triglyceride values increase with age. So a liver function test includes triglycerides and cholesterol because that's stuff to do with the liver, right? Everybody's familiar with that, even from not being in phlebotomy. Going back to chapter 2, I'm looking, you don't have to turn there, I'm looking at page 17. I'm looking at liver function panel in orange. I see, wait a minute. Looking at coronary risk, triglycerides, cholesterol. It says coronary risk or lipid panel, and a lipid panel is pertaining to the liver. And there's all those things I'm talking about, just to get you familiar with what test goes with the organ. Whereas sex hormones may rise and fall. Okay? So growth hormones in children is going to be different than elderly and me. Menopause in women causes decrease in estrogen, progesterone, all that stuff. Red and white blood counts are higher in infants than adults. If you don't understand any physiology about infants compared to adults, always remember that babies compared to adults they're like overachievers. Their heart rates average 120 to 180 for a fetal. Their white blood cell count is higher. Their metabolic rate is higher. Their temperatures are higher. Yada yada yada. Okay, that's why you got to document the patient's date of birth, obviously. Alcohol consumption. If you drink, yeah, okay. That's number 2. ATOH consumption. What do you think it's going to affect?
Your liver, for sure.
Read it for me there, Miss Butters.
Although moderate amounts of alcohol do not affect test results, except of course for the alcohol test, glucose is slightly elevated. Chronic consumption can lead to increased values on liver function tests as well as interfere with platelet aggregation studies.
Blood clotting. I'll just, instead of saying platelet aggregation studies, I'm going to say blood clotting.
Yeah, my dad had a stroke. He's an alcoholic. That was fun.
So when I say blood clotting test, you guys should now be cool enough to understand it could be pertaining to the platelets, it could be pertaining to some other phase of the clotting cascade. Okay? And when I mean cool enough, I mean like you've got the info now to make that, infirm it. Okay? Altitude. This is cool. I talk about it a lot more than we need to. Why would your altitude affect your red blood cells? Well, why would that cause you to have more red blood cells?
To compensate for it?
Lack of oxygen, okay, in the atmosphere. So you go up high on the mountain, the air's thinner. People who live in Colorado and up on the mountain, they on average walk around more red blood cells than we do to compensate for that. Lance Armstrong won the Tour de France 1,000,000 times. Anybody ever heard of him? Mm-hmm. Yeah?
Heard the name.
I usually got kids in here, they never even heard of the movie Back to the Future. No joke. The last class, nobody had seen Back to the Future, even heard of it. And I'm not a Back to the Future fan, but it's like,
It's like a staple.
Yeah.
you can't walk in a Dollar General without seeing something Back to the Future on it. Anyways, Lance Armstrong was ultimately disgraced because he was doping, but he wasn't doping like to make himself like steroids or something to give him an edge. He was taking an artificial hormone called EPO, otherwise known as erythropoietin. What does that do? It's the hormone that stimulates blood production, which you learned in chapter 6 or, yep. And they don't test for EPO because who would think to test for EPO? Yeah, you're testing for other stuff. But he ultimately got busted because he was giving himself a boost with a higher red blood cell count, more oxygen carrying capacity. Athletes will train with a mask on their face sometimes that deprives them of oxygen, I think, and stimulates this. Olympic athletes will move to the mountains to train 6 months prior to the Olympics to get that advantage. So, dehydration. Everybody knows why dehydration would be a problem for you, your patients?
Well, how are you supposed to get blood from somebody that's so dehydrated you can't get it?
Right, it's lower volume, so it's hard to hit. I've noticed since I've taught this class, if I'm dehydrated, can't find a vein, it's a lot harder, they don't pop up. And even students started noticing that when I noticed it and mentioned it. But why does dehydration cause a problem with results? Like you still will get blood out of a dehydrated person. Why is that causing a problem? Well, if your blood is normally at a certain thickness, but you're dehydrated, so your blood's thicker, right? That will cause an increased concentration of analytes, whatever you're trying to look at in the blood, analytes. So if I'm looking at sodium in a normally hydrated person who has, we'll just say 10 gallons of water in them, well, their level is going to be normal. But if a person has 6 gallons of water in them with the same amount of sodium, they're going to look more concentrated. That goes for red blood cell, whatever. This condition, this issue that we're talking about right now for you all, and a test word, key word to remember, another H word, is hemoconcentration. Concentration of the blood. Very important word. It leads to a false increase in analytes, including red blood cells, enzymes, calcium, and sodium. Pretty cool, right? I'm going to pause right here and tell you why you can't leave the tourniquet on too long, and it will cause this issue. It's one of the results of leaving the tourniquet on too long. Because, and this will be a test question. I mean, this is a very good question for certification, whatever. When I put a tourniquet on here, this bottom part of the arm starts to balloon up like a water balloon being filled, right? And our veins pop up. What happens if blood stays in here too long? It can become concentrated because there's still blood being forced in there. And it can become concentrated, and then the blood you draw out will be concentrated, and you'll get that problem, okay? So how long do you leave a tourniquet on? Times 1 minute. Forever and always, amen. Your book on page 9 states 2 minutes and is incorrect. Chapter 9, I'll come back to that. I'll skip it 9, it's kind of boring. Okay, so your book says 2 minutes, it's always 1 minute. All right, moving on. Any questions? Here, number 5 is diurnal variation. I like this word for some reason. Okay. Diurnal means it's an organism that has a cycle of hormones, metabolic activity, moving around, being awake, being asleep, type things like that. Okay, and when you have those cycles, those alternating cycles, there's a natural ebb and flow of levels of hormones in your blood and other things. For example, when you're taking a pregnancy test, the pregnancy hormone, huh? That's a virus, I think, isn't it? What did you say, HPV? No. Can't hear you. Tell me again.
HCG.
Human chorionic growth hormone is higher in the morning, and then it decreases at night. This might be 8 a.m., okay? And so the graph of time, that's what it's going to look like. So you want to sample then, not here. That would be waking hours or early in the morning. And that goes for that's another reason why it's an early job for phlebotomists a lot of the times, because in the morning, everything's at that basal rate, okay? And you haven't eaten. I got to go back to an important thing here. For some reason I missed on, have we gotten to fasting yet? No, okay. Cortisol. Somebody remember commercial says cortisol causes belly fat.
Yeah.
I played it on YouTube last time. That's another one. Help remember that diurnal thing. That commercial will always be in my brain. Exercise obviously raises hormones, increases levels of muscle enzymes. Hopefully you can remember like creatine kinase and jeopardy and myoglobin. Like those are some of the things that result from muscles being worked and rebuilt, and also in a heart attack. I could turn to that page 22 and look at one. Fasting. So we're on 7 now. I'm not going to number them anymore. Okay, fasting is nothing to eat or drink within 8 hours, right? Let's read this paragraph. Do you care to read it for me, Demi?
Prolonged fasting increases bilirubin and fatty acids. Overnight fasting concentrates most analytes. A fasting specimen should be taken 8 to 12 hours after the last intake of food. It is the phlebotomist's responsibility to ascertain that the patient has had no food during that time. Caffeinated beverages such as coffee, tea, and soda must be avoided as well. Caffeine causes a transient rise in blood sugar levels. A patient not in the fasting state may produce a lipemic sample,
Lipemic.
in which the serum or plasma appears turbid. This turbidity, which is caused by an increase in blood triglycerides, interferes with many tests that rely on photometry or the passage of light through the sample.
Okay, let's pause right there. Okay, so no caffeine. Oh, I had a cup of coffee. Well, sorry, you can't come in. Gum. They tell you before surgery, no food, water, medicine, gum before surgery, because gum has what in it?
Sugar.
And sugar can affect your what? Glucose levels. Okay. What else? What else can we do in the morning as soon as we wake up to cause a problem? Smoking. That's usually that's included in fasting. Well, I took my meds. Let's sip, some water. Can you take the patient's blood? Yeah. They usually tell patients who are fasting, take your medicine with just a sip of water, and then you're still considered fasting. All right. How do you know if someone's fasted or not?
Wouldn't it show up in your blood sample?
No, you're going to walk in and be like, all right, here to get your blood. Hopefully they prepared for their test. They've not eaten or drank in the last 8 to 12 hours. How do you confirm this?
Ask them.
Ask them. That's a test question, you all. Just ask the patient. Ask the patient if they have eaten or drinking anything. Okay, lipemic, that word, you'll see it again. You'll see it in a couple test questions probably. What does lipo mean? Fat, right?
I was gonna say that wrong for sure.
Yeah, a lipoma is a fatty tumor. Liposuction is the removal of fat. A lipemic sample is a fatty blood sample. And your blood can actually look a little yellow and cloudy when there's too much fat in it. For example, I went to the doctor and did not know I was supposed to be fasting for labs like 20 years ago for a physical. Well, it was at 1 o'clock. I just got out of KFC and ate some fried chicken. And they took the results, I left, and one day I come back to the doctor like many moons later. She's like, oh, you got high cholesterol levels. We should put you on some medicine or something. I was like, what? And I thought about it years after. I had basically fried chicken floating around in my blood when they took it, That sample was just in there. So obviously I'm going to have high stuff like that. My liver's working it. It's all in there. And they've had me diagnosed with cholesterol disorder for years now, and I've never had it. I've had perfectly fine results after that.
My phone thought you were talking to it.
What did I say?
I don't know.
That's weird.
My Siri works for Mason, but it won't work for me.
I
It's
don't even,
weird.
nobody even said its name. Its name is Bixby.
You need to make sure Siri knows your voice and do the recognition thing.
I need to redo it, I guess, because I will say, hey Siri, nothing. My son will walk up to my phone and say, hey Siri, and she'll come up, and I'm like, why?
He might have to have his own profile. And that gets in all kinds of weird issues I'm not prepared to discuss.
Right?
And so the turbid, that other word I wanted to put up here, is just a word that describes water that's had a bunch of dirt or silt stirred up in it, and it's cloudy, and then it will eventually settle, right? Same thing can happen in urine. You can have turbid urine. They have a lot of precipitates and gunk in there and make it cloudy, or it can be crystal clear. We'll talk about urine later. You guys can collect all kinds of bodily fluids. And we're going to talk about all of them. All right, I think I beat fasting to death now. Patient sex. What did it say about males and females in their red blood cell count? Page 179. Males and females and their red blood cell counts. Why?
Men's are higher.
Yeah. Okay. Women have more HCG usually than men when they're pregnant. Sex hormones, all that stuff. That's why it's different. That's the variable sex. Medications and medical treatments. Okay. Am I going too fast for y'all? I'm not writing anything down right now, but I should. Meds, all right? If you're taking warfarin or heparin, what study might be affected?
Well, heparin, thins your blood, so.
Come on, tell me. What kind of studies?
Clotting?
Yes. Thank God. Blood clotting studies. Done in what tube? What color tube?
Green. No.
Light blue.
Heparin is what's in the green line.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful though. It's beautiful you make that connection. So that's why I'm doing this chapter right now. Okay, good. And I'm not going to go any further, but like diuretics and blood pressure pills or vitamins, all that stuff. Posture. Oh, that's weird. Not to people with bad posture, whether you're laying flat or not. Okay, if I'm laying flat like this and you draw my blood, I'll do it this. I'll draw on the board. People can't see.
You're about to discuss blood pressure, aren't you?
Yeah, so patient posture. If you're laying down in bed and you draw blood this way, then all the molecules in your blood are sort of at the bottom. They're, gravity's been working on you for a minute. Blood's still flowing and everything, but through chemistry and the law of thermodynamics and stuff, bigger fatty molecules and other things are usually lower. But if that patient says, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" and they sit on the side of the bed, then all those molecules are going to go in this way, right? So you can, at the point you draw on here, it could be different results. Now, is it something that people ever really probably worry about or think about in the real world? No. Does it make a big difference for results? Probably. No. But if a patient is coming out of the bathroom and you're a good phlebotomist because Justin put all this knowledge in your head and said, think about the stuff nobody else thinks about. You might miss big issues, but think about the details. They come in. Should you have them just sit on the side of the bed before you draw their blood, or should you just let them get back comfy and then draw it?
You'll sit.
Probably sit first. That way you get the same thing they've been at for the last few minutes. That's when you know you've become a professional, is when you start thinking like that. Pregnancy obviously can affect hormones. Do I need to go any further?
No.
Obesity. You know what? Your book fails you here in saying, well, obesity can cause a problem because it's hard to find a vein. Yeah, no joke. I don't think we need somebody to tell us that. What does it have to do with blood? Nothing really. Maybe some enzymes and all that, but it's kind of like we just need to fill in the page with some info here. Smoking. I've already talked about on the right side of 179, and stress. Stress, yes. Kids who are in the chair just bawling. They've been screaming that way on 30 minutes prior to going to the hospital. They will have elevated levels of things. Crying over grades, hyperventilating over grades, stress hormones, stress causes cortisol. Cortisol causes belly fat. Prolonged crying or hyperventilation can affect arterial blood gases. Why do you think that is? What gases are in your blood we've talked about? So if you're, and then, crying obviously makes your immune system perk up a little bit for some reason. Lactate or locating the patient sometimes, and then the rest. This is kind of where I'm going to stop. Okay, we'll go on to things like obvious stuff, like patient doesn't say they are who's supposed to be on your paper, and they're not in the room. Yeah, that's a problem. I get it. But what should you do in those instances? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, any questions, anything else I can go over right now? So, Thursday next week, online or in paper, we're having a test over Chapter 8. Yep. And 11, because I'm going to finish 11 Tuesday, and that will be on Thursday. Your homework, and I'm not forgot about today's homework. So what date is this? Somebody tell me.
13.
Homework due Tuesday, the 11th. Is to watch YouTube video I'm going to send you on chapter 13. I know nobody can read that. Okay. And take an online quiz over it. And it's pretty good. It's a very, I think it's a 20-minute lecture and a very, if you watch the lecture and take the quiz, you'll be done in 30 minutes maybe. I would encourage you, if you want to keep your notes in order and like be able to refer to them when you're studying for your certification test, have your notebook out and take notes while you're watching the video. Because I kind of do the same thing I do in class. I'm like pulling out the important parts and telling you where to go look further. And then I got one more thing. That's it. We just skipped HIJ, right?
HIJK. The JKL are together.
So JKL will be our next one. Yeah. JKL quiz, 1 week. That's it.
Do you want our homework today? Or?
No, what, let me see. Did anybody have any problems getting it?
No.
I wrote mine down.
Okay, so I think on Tuesday, once we're going to do that as a class. We're going to go and we're all going to register for the test at the same time too. So just hang on to it. Has anybody got any problems with their vaccinations? You've not got all that wrapped up?
No, gonna go get
Gotta go get that COVID test.
the COVID. Yeah, I need to get the COVID test and